All the best, everyone. Correct?
Yeah, let me know when I should start.
Yeah, you can start.
All right. I warmly welcome everyone to this edition of the Flipside webinar series. My name is Fulel Taha, and I will be the moderator this evening. So, for those of you who don't know what a Flipside is, it's a panel discussion where we discuss interesting books. Today is a special day because we are only discussing one book, and it is a coincidence that tomorrow happens to be Valentine's Day. And the book that we are discussing is called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So, before we get into that subject, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Pick a Book. So Pick a Book is an effort to nurture the habit of reading in each and every one of us by deepening the love for books and enhancing social interactions. So Pick a Book encourages the reading habit by getting all participants to select a book, read and research on it thoroughly, and present a summary, which also helps to hone his or her public speaking, communication, and presentation skills. By doing this, Pick a Book not only inculcates the habit of reading, but also helps impart a wealth of knowledge. We now move on to the most exciting part of the session today. We bring you a debate on the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by Dr. John Gray. So let me just tell you a little bit about John Gray. So he was born in 1951 in Houston, Texas. So he's an American self-help author and a pop psychologist who basically built a business empire out of his most famous book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. This was, by the way, published in 1992, right? So based on years and years of successful counseling and of couples and individuals, this book has helped a lot of people transform their relationships. So it's now viewed as a modern classic. This timeless book has helped men and women realize how different they can be in their communication styles, their emotional needs, and their modes of behavior, and offers the secrets of communicating without conflicts, allowing couples to get intimacy every chance to grow. So, with that, we have four wonderful panelists for today. We have Hasna Adib from Caramel Pumpkin. We have Priyan Sudesh from Embassy. We have Rajiv Lochan from Home Tree. And we have Shamha from Caramel Pumpkin. So let me just dive right into the questions. Okay, so when you say, when we usually talk about this book, the first thing that comes up is, the man cave, right? So let me ask you this. It is also, it is a common fact that men and women deal with stress differently, right? So Dr. John Gray actually suggests that men tend to become increasingly focused and prefer to be left alone for some time. In his words, it's called men going into their caves, while women actually tend to vocalize or rather think out loud in an effort to solve their problem. Is basically suggesting that women love to talk about their problems to solve it. My first question, so this is basically directed towards Hasna and Priyan. Hasna, would you like to voice your opinions on this?
Yes, thanks, Pulen. So, considering if any of your listeners are married or even in a relationship, this is something we hear commonly in our day-to-day life. It's often heard that women complain about their man not talking or not responding or not listening to them. So actually, if my husband is listening to this conversation, he probably would agree, because most of the time when we travel along in the vehicle, I keep chattering about, and he doesn't seem to even bother to respond, which really makes me even more annoyed sometimes. But after reading this book is the one where I understood this cave theory. It's that men go into their personal space, and it's called that men go into their cave when they are stressed out, and then when they are more focused. And also, men being men, they wouldn't want anyone coming and advising them, because they think that they are correct. So they don't seek any advice or any help from anyone else. Whereas as women, how we tend to relieve our stresses, it's easier when we talk about the problem. It's not complaining. It's author clearly says it's how they relieve their stress. Because when you keep talking about it, and to a person whom you trust the most, it kind of comforts you. It's a sign of love and trust. So simply, as John Gray say, what he says, it's not to isolate both parties, but what John Gray says is you need to understand these differences, both differences, that how women deal with stress is quite different to how men deal with stress. How men deal with stress is they want their own personal space, they go into their cave, they'll definitely come back from that. And how women deals with this is they talk about it. It's sometimes it's not to receive an advice or to receive a help or a solution. It's just to comfort themselves. So understand these differences. If you can understand your partner's ideas, if you can understand your partner's feeling and what they would want to do when you're in a stressful position, understanding this itself would help you have a better relationship. You can support your partner much better when you're in a problem. So I do agree with John Gray, where he says that you need to understand this difference in how men and women deal stress. That will make your bond more stronger and help you respect each other and their feelings.
Priyan, would you like to comment on what the author suggests? If you're in for it or opposing it?
I would like to say that in debating about this topic about men and women, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, I would say that I'm with the opposition halfway through about what she said and what she tried to elaborate, and what she said in response to where she mentioned that the women and men need to understand their how they deal with stress. And also, I would like to share the same thoughts and same story in my own way, where I would look at it in a different way by going in through the background of the author as to where these ideas came from, where this book originated, with a little bit of research which I did. And where with that, I would say there is a certain degree of how I would disagree in terms of context of where the audience for this book was written. So the idea of how people will go to their cave in the complex situation, and women rather will talk more to find a way out from the problem. To start with John Gray's history, he's an American relationship counselor and also a lecturer and an author. And in 1969, when you look at he spent 9 years in association with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is before beginning his career as an author, as a relationship counselor. So this beginning of him going to India and spending a lot of time, 9 years is a lot of time, and I also have my profound respect for the author for writing a book and developing his business empire with this book, famous book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which happened about 10 years after he left India, went to USA. And so to draw the attention to his teenage life, I would like to, and how John Gray involved as a transcendental meditation and movement eventually, which became, he became a personal assistant to the founder himself, Maharishi itself. And it says in some research I did, it says that he wove celibacy to the guru by agreeing not to abstaining from marriage or any sexual relationship during his stay with for the 9 years, which marks a significant aspect about his young lives. So as an academia, he also had held a degree from the Maharishi Institute itself. And also it says, even though some people disagree, that he also did a PhD through a distance learning course system. So this is the background of the author who wrote this book 10 years after he left India and then went to USA, and where he wrote this book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, a decade later, and which became a bestseller book. Now, the author says the reason and the relationship and conflict that between gender and what he talks about the emotional or the cultural values, and he looks at the subject as two opposites, like men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Why does he put them into two baskets and saying men are from Mars and women are from Venus? By that, trying to separate them. And and looking at how the wisdom was used and interpreted in his book, I would like to take you to a little significant evidence about the verbal expressions we have, beliefs and the ritual practices which have a lot of background to how people think and listen, where men and women are also part of it. The study he used about Eastern wisdom was used to influence the Western thought. I mean, what he learned from East, he tried to use it through his book to influence the Western audience and to create a better society, and by that to enrich relationships. And but what the author says is he had to adjust what he learned to suit his audience, which is a Western audience, and we have to give due respect to that. But I would like to take a quote from another book which I read when I was doing this, and I will read that quote. There has been a long tendency to link the between East and West, presupposing that mutual opposing cultural values of Oriental people and the Western people. He defined as Occidental people. And he says the Oriental people are more spiritual and they are more introvert. They're more synthesis or union. They look at things in union, and they're more subjective in what they're saying. Whereas he defines, this is from the book written by Hajime Nakamura, is a Japanese author, and the Eastern way of thinking. Because John Gray himself went to East to get wisdom before he writes. And he said the Western is more materialistic and they're more extroverted, very outbound, and we are more analytical. Analytical means you divide before you things. You try to divide things and analyze, and it's more objective. So this unquote, the idea of the quote. And what he says, but today, if you look at today, how does this apply to today? Because in today's civilization, we can't say of Western, we can't say Eastern, because now it's a mixed society. We have all, it's a fusion of all these. We can say ancient, they can be medieval people, we can have modern ideas, and also it's the character, it's a fusion in today. So, so why I like this book? This book is inspired from East and written for a Western audience, and whatever and it is a good reference for people to read and to, because it gives a Western perspective of the idea. It is a good reference to understand Eastern wisdom better by looking at the Western opinion of what he talks about, how men think and how women feel, and then know that this was written for a Western audience, but then to understand what the Eastern perspective would be. So and I also had another quote from to give you some idea, because this is the spiritual as well as materialistic, the capitalistic or whatever we call it. And what Ananda Kumaraswamy, he's a Sri Lankan author, world famous author, and in his book Civilization, he says the ideal society is about the cooperative workshop where production is to be for the use and not for profit, and to be for the human need, and for both for body and soul. It's for need, not for profit, not for wants. So it gives some idea about the materialistic way. So what he has written is for a materialistic society where people want to go by quantity, and whereas the spiritual thinking, to elaborate on this term, is more about zero, sunya, the idea of letting go, the idea of more quality, not quantity. When you are thinking about letting go, you actually try to avoid yourself from different identities. Because identities lead to expectations, the expectation of a man, expectation of a woman, and it creates friction and conflict, because materialistic, but they thrive on friction and conflict, whereas the capitalistic thing is more on quantity, accumulate more, human need. It's for sale rather than for use, to sell more, to make profit. So it's more than quality, it's about quantity. So talking about today's aspect of stress management. Stress is because people are striving to go for high expectations, and it is, and the Eastern wisdom is more than stress management. They talk about life management, because stress is not a problem in the Eastern philosophy, because stress, as you look at stress is because if you are energetic and if you are passionate about things, you will look forward to get up in the morning and do the work, not to deal with stress, but to deal with life, rather with passion in life. So this idea of stress, where he learned this wisdom, is about from yoga, from wherever the time is left spent in India, was about union, about no conflict. And this same premise he learned, he used it and he reworded it, and he used the word game, I felt, to use it to idea of perception, and to give boundaries as men and women, and give different propositions and premises to strengthen his idea to suit people from Mars and people from Venus, people, to divide people into two buckets. So in other words, whereas by reading the book, what we can understand is it's all about when you go with expectation, you lead into different chemistry in your body. There can be anxiety because you don't misunderstand. It's to do with expectations of men or women or whatever. And the people tend to lose their potential of being in union, the strength of being in union, but rather because that potential is destroyed by division, and rather than union, appreciating the commonness between the two, the commonness between the man and the woman, and to strive on the potential of the two as a union, rather than the two as two different people. So over to you, Fulel.
Thank you. That is a very interesting perspective indeed. And when it comes to stress management, like you said, it's quite different. So one thing I noticed about we have to note that this book was actually written based on the research of 25,000 people, right? And there was this. It's a very humorously written book, and it's full of interesting analogies. And if this is a request to our audience, if you have actually read this book, we would love to know what your favorite analogy that was mentioned in the book was, right? So now one of the analogies that is very interesting is the fact that now we all know how a rubber band works, right? I mean, where there's a certain point you can stretch it to until it comes back to its normal state. So the author actually makes the bold suggestion that a man's psyche is quite similar. Now, whereas a woman's psyche is actually compared to waves. Personally, I did not understand this analogy. So I'd like to know, I want Rajiv and Priyan to actually clear this out for me and for the audience as well. Rajiv, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Fuller. So when we compare rubber band to the men, so it's like you have to pull the rubber band and then it comes back. So that's how a man's cycle works. So I would like to add up something to Priyan's comment for the previous question. So once a man has a stress, so he has to release everything, even stress, even problems, whatever he has, to come back to the situation where he was, to attach with that woman. So here the book says, like when a man loves a woman practically, he needs to pull away before like he can get closer. And but it's not a natural cycle end of the day. So it's not a his fault or her fault. It's naturally happens. So the thing here is both of them has to like understand when a man goes back, a woman doesn't know why he goes back, but actually he wants to come back with all the love that he wants to give to the woman and without any problem. So then again John Gray talks about why women actually get panic. So women gets panic and they doesn't know the reason why they got, because they didn't know what turned off the man actually. What did they say to him? So here's what he has been explained. So she gets panic and she doesn't know so what she did to him to turn off. And then we can compare with women as waves. So for example, we can take if a woman is loved, her self-esteem rises, and if she's feeling really good, and it will reach to at a peak. And then we'll say if she has a problem, and all of her self-esteem, all the good vibes, everything breaks. So when this happens to a man, when something happens to a man, he goes back and release all the things and get back to the woman. So here they talk about differentiates these two things, and but it's actually a temporary thing. So it won't like long last. They have like many solutions that you can like talk to each other, and you can yeah, love each other and complete it. So that's what here they say about men are like rubber bands and like women are like waves. So yes, Philip, it's over to you.
Priyan, what is your opinion on this analogy?
Yeah, I think I cannot fully disapprove what Rajiv says. What he says is right, but men tend to be quiet and get into their cave, whereas women have their ups and downs in their mood, as the author says. I would like to demystify this idea, because I have just started pitching on this idea where this wisdom came from. So I would like to elaborate a different viewpoint of how there could be a different viewpoint or different premise to this on the argument that we are trying to build on as Team B. So men inevitably pull away, whereas so that pulling away helps to come back, and women has this rise and fall thing where it is like kind of a wave. So where this, looking at this to demystify this idea, how it was built into this book. Now, he obviously had this yogic background about the Eastern learnings he had about his PhD degree and everything that obviously would have influenced this book. So according to the yogic perception, man is equal to the sun. Sun, we know, we depend on the sun for many things permanently. So it is more like, so when you relate this idea to a man and the yogic idea, what it says is men are predominantly masculine, but they less feminine. So what he tried to say is these qualities of pulling as a rubber band or the wave form, it exists in both men and women. Women if we is a representation of beauty and attraction. So if we compare it with the moon, it's predominantly feminine in nature, but less masculine. So it does mean that women also has this masculine aspect into their life. So and what they say when they talk about feminine or the energies that women they are talking about, this idea about downs and ups in a wave. The feminine talking in terms of up and downs, it's similar to this idea of a waveform, which is if you look at the moon, necessarily we look at moon as light. Light is a waveform. So that idea is demystified and used as a premise to come up with this related to this waveform in the mood of a woman. But what I'm trying to emphasize is this same idea can be there in the man also, because the man will go down in certain, I mean, it's a masculine and feminine nature of human beings, of anything, any life form into that. If you take that, even plants have male and female aspect to it, even animal has the same aspect to it. So this men and women go through both aspects of life, about masculinity or femininity. So so looking at this, what has happened is, in the context of this book, because this book is written for a Western audience where individuality is given more prominence. Like we know, they are more independent people. So individuality, where even for marriage or getting to know a person or getting married is very spontaneous decision. And even the divorce, if you look at the societies, it's even faster than getting together, because it's so fast. Because they handling pressure of whatever relationship is also depending on the people who are subject, only people. But in a different perspective, where he came up with these ideas, it's more different, where it's more Eastern, more collective, and decision making is more collective. It's a cultural thing. And even the ups and downs are also looked at in the same way, because then it's not men separately, but looking at both as together in union. So what they say is to look at the commonness in men, the commonness in women, where they found there is masculinity in a women as well, and there is femininity in a man as well, because men are also equally capable of loving. And so it depends on the role they play. Even we know in today's modern, it's a few society, women play a lot of leadership roles. That's the masculine side of a woman. And so this, for some reason, people perception only is limited to what they see, what they can hear, what they smell, the five senses. So, but according to human perception, according to the Eastern thoughts, you need to have that contrast. Otherwise, you can't perceive. For you to feel about men, you need to know about the feminine side, the women. Masculinity, you need to contrast with femininity. If you want to talk about light, you have to talk about darkness. If not for darkness, you will not know what is light. If you will not know about silence, if not for sound. So there is, you will not taste bitterness if there is no taste. So human perception needs that contrast. And so it is easily attached to this senses to look at contrast rather than to look at union. So this idea of man and woman, that masculine and feminine, according to ideas, where he learned came about from as look at, rather than looking at separating them, look at union, because men and women both are equally have these qualities. There is a man inside a woman, and there is a woman inside a man. So this is called the yin and yang. In the black, you have a white dot. In the white, you have a black dot. So, so a rather different viewpoint. So the good thing about this book is, rather than looking at this dualistic idea, to understand the dualistic idea of the Eastern, you have to read this book. There are not much written about the Eastern wisdom, but there is a lot of things written in Western part of the world, where we can also all read English, because English education is very well established. But then the idea to understand Eastern wisdom, you have to read English books. That's why I like this book in another way. So to a certain extent, I don't fully disagree with the author's perception. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Priyan.
yeah,
Yes.
just give me a second. So, Priyan, when you talked about stress, these authors compared how women handle stress and men handle stress. Okay, so when it comes to men, they actually focus on one problem, okay, and find a solution for it. Then they move on to the others. So when it comes to women, when they don't think about one problems, so it expands and overwhelmed, and it can be even worse. And sometimes women think about past problems and future problems, and sometimes they talk about the problems that they don't have a solution for it. So that's how the psyche works here between handling stress between man and women. So that's the author's point of view here. So to expect otherwise is to deny a woman or sense of self. So that's what the author says here about handling stress. So just I want to add that point as well, Priyan, to you as well.
Yes, Rajiv, you are correct in that aspect, because what the authors are trying to say, but if you look at the opposite, the same idea viewpoint from the other viewpoint is like even the universe. If you look at the entire universe as one whole thing, we right now are traveling at a speed of 70,000 kilometers per second. We don't even realize that we are traveling that fast. I mean, galaxies drive, but we are all kept together. So what this wisdom in Eastern says is they are all kept together, and we don't feel the stress because of the feminine nature of there is a bond between all these galaxies and the celestial items, which is the feminine nature of the universe, to keep it still. And we don't feel that stress, but actually we are traveling at 70,000 kilometers. Now, 3 seconds, we have gone 240,000 kilometers, but we don't feel it right now in these 3 seconds because of that feminine or that bonding or the attraction that is kept. The thing. So in feminine nature, they have to deal with a lot of things because to keep everything together. So they may be trying to deal with a lot of issues at the same time because they will go into all the possible areas, whereas the masculine nature is to direct fast and go at things and very goal oriented, piercing through a problem fast, whereas the feminine nature is to deal with all the other problems to keep it together when it is in this whole stress.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I have
Priyan,
a small point.
yeah.
Pulal, just a second. I have a small
Sure.
point on that. Now, when Priyan explained, he itself put feminine. He's been explaining as feminine nature and the masculine nature. So at the beginning, what he said was, why does the author put these two people into two buckets? So that is the whole point here. The reason is we individually the qualities, the feminine qualities, the masculine qualities are different. And one point I do agree is Priyan said there could be a black dot on the white and white dot on the black, but still black and white is two different things. So there could be different combinations of the two, but then all in all, taking it's two different personalities we're talking about. So I think that's what, to make it more clearer, that's what the author take one species from the Mars and one species from the Venus, which will help people understand these differences much more easily when you say when it's in two different buckets.
Yeah, because the Western viewpoint will give you the extreme detail about man, extreme detail about a woman, but then it is a good reference point to look at. And then it gives a different dimension, different ideology. And then it makes easy to understand the Eastern perspective also as well as the Western perspective. I wouldn't totally disagree in that aspect, yes.
This is something I actually love about the book. There's always two schools of thought. There's always a different opinion, and I guess that's a good thing, because I remember at a pick a book session when this book is being presented, it's guaranteed to go for hours and hours, because the conversation that builds up is so interesting, right? So let's quickly move on to the next question, which is directed towards the ladies, because um, we would love to get their feedback on this. So now, um, this is not my words, by the way. This is the author's words, just so that I don't get into trouble. So according to John Gray, women have a tendency to voice their concerns in absolutes. Now, for example, they might say, this house is always a mess, or we never go out, although they do, and nobody listens to me. Now, so I'd like Hasna and Shamha to basically explain the accuracy of this. How accurate are these statements that are mentioned in the book? Hasna, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure, Pulen. So I don't know if this was deliberately session was arranged today, or was it a coincidence that Valentine's Day is tomorrow? But all the men around who's listening, if you have even happen to ask your wife or your girlfriend whether they want anything for Valentine's, I'm sure you would have got a response saying, okay, no, I don't need anything, or don't spend too much on me, this kind of answers. But guys, don't misunderstand and take the term as it is. I'm sure they will be wanting something, but they wouldn't be saying it to you directly. So this is what the author also says in his book. So all the guys out there, if you still have a few more hours, if you haven't got anything for Valentine's Day, please go ahead and grab something while you are listening to this as well. So this is what the author says. Generally, women, what they say, they don't say things directly. And the issue is sometimes men tend to misinterpret this and misunderstand what they're trying to say, which will not help them understand the version of the female version of what they're trying to say. So women assume most of the time, women say things in poetic lines. They use superlatives, metaphors, and also if you would have noticed, most of the time when they are angry, they tend to generalize things. They wouldn't put it as it is, saying put the anger as it is. They will generalize the term to the whole society and might talk. Uh, Whoever is listening to this conversation, it's quite familiar. I mean, it's probably ringing a bell behind your head. So on the other hand, men are generally silent, and when they want to say something, if they say, yeah, I'm fine, that is yes. And Fuller, as you said, the author brings out a few examples as well to understand this concept. Like, for example, when as you said, when the author says, when a woman says this house is always messy, a man might try to understand it and respond to saying, no, it's not messy, we just cleaned it a few hours ago. But actually what she might be trying to saying is not that. She's trying to say at the moment it's messy and I'm too tired to arrange it, I need some help, that kind of thing. And also another example that the author gives is sometimes they say everyone ignores me, or no one is talking to me. So this is not exactly that the whole world is ignoring her, but also but what she's trying to say is today I'm feeling a little ignored or acknowledged. So at this moment, what a man has to do is not to react to what she's saying, but try to respond, try to help her with the emotional feelings. So all in all, there is always a line in between what a woman is talking. So men, it does, I'm sure the men will complain, but it takes some time to understand this fact, and it takes some time to understand what she's trying to say. So in general, understanding what the author is trying to say, it will make it much more easier for men to understand what women are talking about, and would be more helpful. It'll make it more helpful for them to respond to what the woman is saying, and it'll definitely reduce arguments, because when the man doesn't understand exactly what the woman is saying and what she is trying to say, maybe it ends up in an argument, because it goes on and on and on, because when they don't respond to it properly, it annoys the other party even more. So that goes on and on and on and ends up in an argument. So with the we need not take the examples as it is. Author also says at the beginning of the book, some people trying to misuse the concepts of the book. They try to they misinterpret what he's trying to say, but what the author is trying to do is just to give some examples in the two aspects where people will understand the concepts more. It's not to confuse, or it's not to personalize these things, but try to understand the other party, try to understand the other party's feelings, what the other party is trying to say, which will make your relationship more stronger, which will make it easier to respond, which will help you understand the other person and have a better relationship between the two.
Shamha, what are your thoughts? Because, for example, I have always, I was just telling Hasna also that the amount of times I have heard this house is always a mess is just too much. But also there are people, there are ladies rather, who say directly to the point. So what is your opinion on all of this, Shamha? Shamha, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Fulan. And I was laughing about this Hasna's tale that as we celebrated the tomorrow the Valentine's, about to celebrate, that she was requesting the gifts from the man. And I think I wanted to spend time with my boyfriend. Even though I get expensive gifts, that I don't feel good. So what I feel good is that the time is important for me. And talking about this speaking different language, let me read the author's idea of these speaking about the language. The first thing, the starting point where the author has started like this. Let me read it. When the Marinians and Venuses first get together, they encountered many of the problems with relationships we have today, because they recognized that they were different. They were able to solve these problems. So in the author's weave, that we can get an idea that he has some kind of a weave about ill man and ill woman. To state his weave, we can even observe his TEDx talk in 2014 in June, in TEDx band, that he has himself, he said that he is not able to able to accept his daughter's love life. And he was saying in this TEDx, he was saying like her daughter is in the early stage of love, and some kind of verses there. And also in his YouTube channel, that he's stating about these the divorced man and the divorced woman. So in my opinion, the author himself, that he stated the points where the relationship it started with the problem. So does this apply to all the men and women in general? The second thing, he come up with the information that he gathered as throughout his book, that we can witness expressing feelings versus expressing information, where he says the Mattern and Venus's languages and the same words, but the way they were used gave different meaning. So here we have understand thought and emotion is only happening because of a certain amount of information that we gathered. Isn't it right? Okay, let me get this straight. So when you look at me at the first time, you have some certain kind of idea like oh, she is good, oh, she is bad. So the different kind of the opinion that you may have. So this is so here we can say that in the, throughout his book he elaborated the information that he gathered in the past, and then he goes like these funny topics actually, that I would say it's a really funny and a humorous way, but it has some logical as well. So the 10 common complaints that are easily misinterpreted, that he give then he gives a list of the words, misinterpreted words, and then he goes with Venus and Mars's phrases dictionary, and then he goes with how she reacts to his silence, understanding the cave. So here it's a very clear picture. The author has come up with a small psychological drama, and understanding our psychological processes entirely is a small drama. It's nothing to do with the reality, and everybody has their own space, and we need to respect men and women, and individual space is very, very important. And also then he goes with the getting a burdened by the dragon. I really feel bad about this use of word, the dragon. My question is here, what is the need of using the symbolism, the word dragon? So it's quite a I really feel too bad because in this situation I think he could have used better words. And also he goes with in this same chapter, that he goes how to support a man in his cave. Too much caring is something. So here simply the author has played with a word through the psychological drama. As I said before, it's nothing to do with reality. And also through his in this chapter, through his discussion about this different use of language, he gave his personal two kind of a story. So two different stories. The first story that where he goes, he went to the Sweden, and he forgot the passport, and he asked his wife to fetch the passport. It's a very normal thing. Every woman and every man has to do. Like if the husband forgot the passport, then the wife definitely should fetch the passport. It's a very common and general story. So but he has created a big drama picture. They are saying different kind of words. And also the second story, where he goes, while he was writing the same book, then he goes that where his wife entered his room, and asked this he has quoted the word that we hardly have any time together. Simply that if girls expressing her feeling in this way is a love of the language of love. We don't go with this psychological drama here. So what I felt was the author has some kind of emotional mixed, and also does it, and I felt that does it fear of success of life, or does it fear of emotions? So in this chapter, and I mean talking about this topic, different languages, use of languages, finally he come up with an idea of art of listening. So in my way, it's a very fundamental and social skill, and also that it's like how we are with other beings, and we develop relationship and continues matters the most. So in my opinion, the author himself has a mixed emotion, and also I felt that he was comparing, and he was pretending also in his first life, as we all already know that he has went through a hardship in the first life, and the second life he has want to portray that he has some successful life story, some successful relationship. So he brought so certain kind of information and thoughts and elaborate his information in this way. That's all. Thank you. Yeah, Fulai. Fulai?
Yes, Shamha. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. So that is actually quite interesting. I mean, like I said, there's always two schools of thoughts, and I highly recommend that our audience actually read the book to find out, to dig deeper, to find more on what the book actually says. So my next question is directed towards Rajiv and Shamha. So the author actually gives us suggestions on methods to resolving conflicts. For example, one example is to understand each other's differences. Could you elaborate on the validity of these suggestions? How valid are these suggestions? Rajiv, would you like to go first?
Yes. Thank you, Fulay. So when it comes to arguments, I just want to ask these questions to all the panelists. Whom do you think start the argument first? Is it men or the women? Even Hasna, you can tell that. Whom do you think? Even you can take from your life and you can say it. What do you think, Hasna?
So from the last discussion that I put forward, if a man do understand what the woman is trying to say, it would not lead to an argument. Rather, understanding and responding to her rather than reacting would help resolve any arguments rather than moving towards an argument. So it's not that a man or a woman starts an argument, it's that when they start interpreting what they're trying to say, it could lead to an argument.
Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to relationship, when communication as a most important thing in a relationship, so arguments can be most destructive. So how to avoid these mistakes, arguments? So it's a small secret that the author says in the book. So avoiding your argument is when you communicate each other, you have to have the love and you have to show some respect towards each other. So you can come out of the argument and there will be no arguments at all. So from my side, when you say, I'll say women's are the one who argument first. Okay, so the men will be silent and then they will find a solution for that. So yes, and sometimes the arguments hurts the most. It can go to a peak and it hurts most the both sides. So in this, they say it's not like what we say hurts the most. It's how we say hurts the most. So even if you argue in a good way, in a caring and a lovable way, it won't be a big issue at all. So this is why arguments hurt. And the next, I want to say, like women don't like realize how they are hurtful to men. So suddenly they rise a peak and they scold at men and yell at men, and they pretend that as nothing happened, but it deeply affects the men as well. And actually, when we see if women feels challenged, for example, when a husband and wife are having a fight, if a woman feels challenged, you can see the differences in suddenly her tone starts increasing. She becomes like louder, and the mistrusting comes in between that communication. And at last, I don't know how it will be going and end. And when a man feels challenged, his attention becomes like focused on being right, and he forgets to being loving as well. So that's how you have to avoid the arguments between women and men. So first, you have to show the love when you are communicating, and second, you have to show the respect towards each other, so that you can avoid those arguments between you both and live a happy life. So that's my point of view. Sharma, over to you.
Yes, Rajiv.
You can't
Rajiv,
disagree on this.
no, the thing is that I was thinking, actually, that I was thinking, you're talking
You
about the
can't
pre-marriage
disagree.
relationship where we have these infatuations, or else are you talking about the after marriage, the healthy relationship?
No, even before the marriage and after the marriage, same thing. No, if a boy
No,
and girls in a
no,
relationship, so they argue for a small thing and ends up in a breakup. If both of them understand each other and talk in a respectful manner and love each other, so that
I
won't
think,
happen.
Rajiv, is that argument, or is there any word that we could use the better, that whatever discussion? It's a discussion, right? Let's say, for an example, like if I am discussing with my partner about my financial status or my job, it's
Okay.
called discussions, right? It's not the argument. And
Okay.
also, that women do raise their voice when they talk to the his boyfriend or the husband, as we fall in love with the person, that we naturally we raise our voice. It's do natural. It's a natural thing that you can even see your girlfriend, or else like within your circle, you can even observe that the girls raise their voice when they talk to a very close person. The second thing, that the first, basically I'm not agree with this author's way, the word of usage, the use of word where he used these arguments. The second thing, what I felt was, when we need to communicate, we need to be a very good listener. In a modern days, I mean, after these 90s, so most of the girls and the mans also, they're very good listeners. If we are getting into a healthy relationship, so it makes the curiosity to listen to the other person, the other partner. Even though that we feel stressed, sometimes we pull to listen to them because we love them. So the curiosity and the knowledge and the cooperations make the persons to listen. uh, if the person understand and respect the relationship, then he or she might may be a good listener, right? And also, like when it comes to the relationship, the argument, I mean, I'm not using the word argument. If we are wanted to discuss anything, we really need to understanding, it's very important to understanding the need of the partner. It can be a man, or it can be a woman, right? And also, let's say for an example, everybody, like as an individual, I love the way uh, I wanted to be treated the way that I treated the others as well, right? So treat others the way that we need to be treated. It will naturally comes in a healthy relationship. I'm talking about the healthy relationship. I'm not talking about these unhealthy relationships. And also, the accepting the disagreement is when it comes to this point, uh, the basically we have to accept that others will have some different opinion. It could be a wrong or a right. We have to stand on our feet to accept that others do have a different opinion. Basically, what I believe is that all these kind of beliefs comes from the young age. It's not of the marriage. It do happens. The person has to develop their communication skills. Also, he has to be a very effective communicator. So she or he has to be a very good organizer. So in this way, that I think we have to put our words into this way. And also, what I felt was, while I was listening to Rajiv and Hasna, how does it relate to us, as we have a beautiful family structure, and how do we relate to us? Because author himself, he has said that it's all about the unhealthy relationship, and also the author's has published the book for the Western audience. So simply, I do not agree with this kind of a topic in this book. The fact is, the author himself has mixed emotions, and he has gathered some information, and he has proved the information. He has written the book to prove his information. And yeah, thank you, Fulal.
Yes. So Asna, I want to add more example to you. So you said argument is the correct word. So it can be a discussion as well. Okay. So just as an example, we'll say you're calling your boyfriend out for a dinner. Okay, 8 p.m. Okay. So your boyfriend comes at 8:30 p.m. So do you think you will be discussing that or you will be arguing that?
So Rajiv, what exactly happens is, I mean, in such a situation, you could start with a discussion. Yes, I do agree with Shamha. Yes, we do have to discuss to resolve issues. But sometimes, as the author also says in the book, women don't directly say things. The words that a woman says could be misinterpreted by the man, which converts the discussion into an argument. The argument is when both parties don't fully agree and they try to overpass the other person. That would not be a discussion. I do agree that it should be discussed and sorted out. But with the point that I spoke before itself, when you don't understand the other party's feelings, when you don't understand what the other party is trying to say, it discussion converts into an argument.
Okay, you're telling it starts with discussion and ends with arguments.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Asna, for that.
All right. This is indeed the discussion we wanted. So we can disagree with each other as much as we want, but I think one thing we can agree on is how this book gets us to talk. This is indeed a very interesting book, to say the least. Now that we have come to the end of the session, I'd like to get, we have now compared to and contrasted this book with our life experiences, right? So I'd like to get our panelists' opinion on this book. So I'd like to invite Hasna and Priyan to answer this. What are your opinions on this book, and has this book helped you in any way?
Yes, Fulal, before answering that, now I think it was already mentioned also, this book was published in 1992, and now we are in 2022, which is 30 years past the published date. But most of the people who reads, if you go on Google, if you go on Goodreads, people do have different views on the book. They have agreed to what the author is saying and also disagreed. And most of the people argue saying that the author is sexist and it gender stereotypes people. But author itself says in one of the editions, which was published 20 years later, he says it's true that people have evolved, the cultures have changed, and also as it was mentioned, it was written to the Western world. He does acknowledge all these facts, but what he also says is the basic ideas in this book are still the foundation. If you see, I mean, without going word by word and trying to argue what the author says and trying to argue that what he says is wrong, if you take the full essence of the book, or if you take the foundation of the book, the ideas he tries to put out is still the foundation, because without the understanding the fact that men and women are different, if a man tries to feel, or if a woman tries to feel that the opposite party should think of the same way that I do, or maybe they should act the same way that we are. It would not happen. Not only in the opposite sex, but even with our colleagues, with our friends, even it's the same. I mean, you can't expect another person to think or react the same way that you think. So, but as the author say, all in all, we do differentiate as men and women, and men being men will always be men, and women will always be women. There could be a percentage of feminine hormones in it's a percentage of feminine hormones and percentage of masculine hormones that we are talking about. The ratios, the percentages a person would have could be different, but as the author also says, the basic foundation of qualities of a man, qualities of a woman is the same. Although the amount of these qualities that you have, you could inherit a percentage of a woman could inherit a percentage of masculine hormones, and also vice versa. So what we really have to agree on it is not to pinpoint on the words that he's talking, or not to pinpoint on examples that he's bringing up. It's just examples that he's bringing up to make sure that we understand the concept of the book. But it's rather we could understand the feelings, understand the emotions of the other party, which will help you understand and to respect the feelings or respect the personal space of the other person. So considering the fact that we've been in a lockdown period, this book is, I think, a must read for all of us, so that we reduce the conflicts in between our families, in between our partners, and would help to love each other more, respect each other more, and to understand the other people much more in a much better way.
Priyana, we would like to get your opinion as well on this book.
Yeah, on the same idea, because we have been talking against the topic. That's the task we have been assigned, to talk against the topic of the author. So I would like, we will discuss few points about stress, intimacy, and we also talk about the loving attitude, and also we talk about the language, interpretation of the language, and also how to handle arguments. And the author, what he does is he talks about these topics. And as we said, for me to develop my argument, and the logic of my argument is to look at the interpretation of his knowledge about the subject. So what he does is mainly, I would like to go into say that the argument, or the logic he's using to discuss this, it is a more suited for the audiences he has written this book for. That we have to bear in mind, because it's mainly has written the book in USA, so which is more of a Western audience. Whereas the before he wrote the book, he lived in eastern part of the world, where he gathered his information. So I will use that premise of the strength of his eastern knowledge, which gave him the strength and the support to write the book, as to develop my argument to conclude this session. So when you look at the Western way of looking at things, it is about analysis. That is a characteristic of the Western or what we call the Occidental way of thinking. Whereas the Eastern way of thinking is synthesis. Synthesis is to knit together things. Analysis is to sharply divide things. So analysis is more like a sharp knife. You are given something to analyze. What you will do is you break this into two and analyze it further. Once you are done with that, you will analyze it further by breaking the next two pieces. So his logic of arguing his case is by analysis, because it's obviously a natural way a person of that character would do. Whereas the Eastern way of looking at things is to knit things together. So it's not a sharp knife. It is the yarn and the needle, how to bind and how to stitch together. So knitting together the people's differences or the gender differences is how he learned his wisdom, by looking how about some knowledge, becoming inquisitive about the Eastern wisdom, about how to knit together things, knit together a man and woman. And but he very nicely and give it a very pluralistic meaning, because we have different schools of thoughts, and what he has done is to write the same thing to you suit a Western audience, where we'll give a pluralistic interpretation about this idea about attraction between men and women. And whereas so there are two different ways. So what I would like to say is men get together as men, women get together as women as a group when they want to fight for their own rights, for survival. Women will say we are women, men will say we are men, because they get together as women because they want to survive. Survival is a basic instinct for any animal. So I would say a materialistic way of looking at it is to look at the form of survival. But the Eastern way of looking at things, of knitting together things, to bring things together, to look at things in harmony, would be a more of a higher purpose, which is a natural character of the Oriental person, which is more of a spiritual way of looking at it. And as an example, if I say, young people strive on differences more. They will see women as women and men as women. They will get together. Men are fighting for men's rights. Women fight for women's rights. But when people get older, do they fight for the gender differences? I think when people get older, I think the gender differences doesn't matter. So that is more people getting older. It doesn't mean Western or Eastern. Even in the Western society, people, when they get older, they become more spiritual. So spirituality, in a sense, is not only confined to the Eastern world. It's also very much in if you argue that way. So older people don't go by gender a lot. When a woman gets older, it's more of a man and a woman. And when a man gets old, he becomes more of a man and a woman. I mean, people, when they go old, they become children like they were born. So with that argument, I would like to conclude by saying that this book is a wonderful book. And also by when you look at these ideas of how we read books, we must have the background. And I would like to conclude by Brighton McHugh's minute in 1985, which he says, if you look at the wisdom of Eastern and Western wisdom, in his minute in 1980, it's a very famous wisdom. I quote this Wikipedia, and he says, the idea is to criticize almost everything in India vehemently. It can be its astronomy, it can be about the culture, it can be about the history, it can be about everything from philosophy to religion, and to praise everything that is Western. So what we have to look at this is, it plays a big role when we look at books. I mean, when we look at books, we must look at where the book comes, where the wisdom comes, what is it talking about? Is it how they are approaching the logical arguments? Is it synthesis, or is it analysis? Is it trying to divide, or is it trying to knit things together? So the approach is very much very important in this aspect. And so with that minute from Meke, with the looks at, I think this was a very fruitful debate to understand Eastern wisdom better by looking at the Western perspective. Thank you.
Indeed, it was. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to all of our panelists, Hasna, Adib, Shamha, Najimuddin, Priyan, and Rajiv, for taking their time and coming together to explain, I would say, a very relevant topic to this day. And given that this book was written quite some time back, I feel like there are points that we could agree and disagree with. But like I said, one thing that we all agree is that everybody should read the book. And one advice or one suggestion I would make before you read the book is please do not read the comments or the reviews of the book before reading it. We would like you to get your own opinion on the book by actually reading the whole book. So thank you, everybody. And with that, we would like to conclude our Flipside debate for this evening. A huge thank you to our audience, a huge thank you to all our panelists. With that, we'd like to say good night and dare I say happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Fulel, for inviting me and all the other panelists. And thank you, Sarah, for inviting us. And it was a wonderful opportunity given for us to express our ideas and opinions and debate, very healthy debate about the book, and a wonderful evening. Thank you all, the panelists and the moderators.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
I would also like to extend the thanks to Pick a Book and Fulel, and definitely our audience who were here. I mean, without our audience, it would not be a successful session. So thanks a lot, everyone. I'm sure all of us enjoyed it, including the four of us. While debating, all of us enjoyed the whole session. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. See you.
Thank you. Yes.